Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, I talked about this pamphlet or letter that was sent home by Peel Region of Peel School Board, and it was abuse. It was instructing parents to abuse their children. If somebody did this outside of public health's recommendation, they would risk having their children removed from their care, right? The child must self-isolate which means, stay in a separate bedroom, eat in a separate room apart from others, use a separate bathroom if possible. If the child must leave the room, they should wear a mask and stay 2 meters apart from others. It is strongly recommended to test for COVID-19, blah, 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 blah. This is psychological abuse to a child. You do not do this to a child, especially one who might be sick. You don't do that to a child. And so the public backlash was a lot. This is Ryan O'Connor, and he's asking for parents in the Peel region whose asymptomatic children have been dismissed from school and told to self-isolate to get in touch with them. The thing is, it's not just a Peel policy. It's everywhere. I'll show you in one of these tabs in a minute. It's in Guelph, and it's in other places as well. Sorry, I was trying to skip to the Guelph. Hold on, I'm going to find it. Hold on. Here's the Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health. Same policy. It's not as explicit. It doesn't say put your child in a separate room and make sure they use a separate bathroom and blah, 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 blah. But the implication is there. And in the Peel one, yesterday I showed you, it was on pain of fine. If you chose to ignore these rules, you were risking a fine of up to $5,000 per day, right? Think about siblings. Think about how often they play together, okay? And I'll read you a first-hand account of somebody trying to follow these abusive recommendations. Okay, they've walked it back. They've tried to, but the genie's out of the bottle. And I think that this has actually been handed down from the ministry, and I don't think it's rogue public health agents. This is happening today on Twitter. I'm talking with some people. I wrote a letter to the Ministry of Health this morning, and I was making some comments on Twitter, and somebody else said, yeah, it's happening here too in their Angora, I think, or I can't remember exactly the health unit they said, but they said they were in contact. They had already put emails and calls to their district school board and to the Ministry of Health or the public health in that area, and he'd tell me what they said, but he'd already heard no comments. Okay, so this is blown up. People are upset about this, and rightly so. Nobody should abuse a child. And Milgram, I've been banging this drum for weeks. More so in the last couple of days, but the Milgram experiment shows that humans, if told to by an authority figure, will administer punishment until death if continued to be told to do so by an authority figure. They will just comply. They won't think about it, most of them. Okay? A large majority. Okay, here's Anthony Fury. Parents are being told by public health that when their kids are dismissed from school because a classmate has tested positive, they must quarantine the child alone in a separate room for 14 days, even small children, even those who are asymptomatic. Healthy kids, you have to quarantine them. And if not, you will get a fine, right? They have to stay away from their siblings. They cannot have the siblings in the room. They have to stay in the room. Can you imagine? This is an isolation. In prison, this is illegal. You can't do this to somebody. And they're doing this to somebody because they happen to be in a classroom with a sick person. That's it. That's their crime. And you have to go to self-isolation for 2 weeks? Sorry, kid. What is it, your 7th birthday? Deal with it. I can't stress this enough. This is the recommendation. This is the expectation from these crazy public health officials who are not going to be held accountable. Nobody is calling for their head. I'm calling for their head, but I don't know anybody else who's saying, you know what? When you recommend as a public health agency to abuse children, you should probably lose your job. Okay, Patrick Brown, the mayor of Brampton, who seems to be more powerful than other mayors. I don't get it. My mayor says, we can't do that. That's not in my purview. I'm not allowed to comment on that. Patrick Brown seems to be able to comment on that. He says, public health must ensure the best interests of children and families are at the center of recommendations. They must be based on science and with evidence for all to see. I'm relieved to hear from Dr. Lowe that this mistake is being fixed and this flyer is being removed from circulation. They fixed the mistake. Here's how they fixed it. We made a mistake. We put out a flyer about what parents and guardians should do when their child gets sent home from school after a COVID-19 exposure, and we left out an important detail. Yeah, don't abuse your kids. That's the important detail. Anyone exposed to COVID-19 is directed to self-isolate at home, away from others in the home as much as possible. That includes children. For children, we know as a caregiver may need to isolate with them to help with daily living, such as bathing, feeding, clothing, and emotional support. So now they're recommending that a parent isolate with the child. Do they mean be in the same room as the child. So we've got one person who's maybe exposed to a sick person in a school with a positive COVID-19 test. This impacts up to 25 other kids, other parents, other families that will now have to isolate a parent and a kid from everybody else in the home. Does this make any kind of sense? This is still abusive. This is not okay to do to a population. And is this what public health recommended? Is this from public health, or is this just from Region of Peel? I have a lot of questions, and I don't think there's good answers. And I'm not expecting good answers. Okay, anyway, back to this. This is Region of Peel is recommending, not the health ministry. Like not the health ministry, not the public health from the Region of Peel. This is just Region of Peel tweeting this out. Blue check mark makes it legit, right? Black ball beats it all. Okay. Okay, that includes children. Anyone exposed to COVID-19 is directed. I already read that. For children, we know that a caregiver may need to isolate with them to help with daily living, such as bathing, feeding, clothing, and emotional support. This direction, which was set by the province, has been in place to help prevent the spread across Ontario since before school started in September. This specific detail about the caregiver isolating with the child were on our website, but not on the flyer. No surprise that it would upset and confuse people. We're fixing it right now. This week, our school board partners, Peel Schools and DPCDSBS Schools, will have a new handout to share with parents and guardians. If you need this info right now, we've got you covered, and they link to the new article, I suppose. I'm not going to look at it yet. It says, we know you want to protect your children from COVID, and we do too. We're sorry for the confusion and for making an already stressful time more difficult. I don't think this fixes anything. Where's Dr. Lowe? Where's the accountability for the abuse that's already happened? And hold on, let's look at what's happened. Okay, so here's Anthony Fury. He says, Peel Health Child Isolation Policy, a mistake that's being fixed, says Brampton Mayor. Okay, so we saw how they're fixing it. They're just saying, oh yeah, don't isolate the child, isolate with the child. Kulvinder Kaur, Dr. Gill, says this mistake is being fixed only after outrage from parents, frontline physicians, and child advocates. Who is accountable for harming kids? When are all of your other unscientific, unconstitutional, and harmful mistakes being reversed? Yeah, this is absolutely terrible precedent and a terrible way to fix this. Whose responsibility is this? If this was a provincial mandate, Peel Region shouldn't be fixing this. This should be cleared up by maybe Minister Elliott, and maybe all of the health units should follow suit in clearing this up, because there's real damage done. Real damage, and I'll show you what that damage is. Here's Randy Hillier, and he's asking Doug Ford to take a stance on this, because this is apparently coming from the top. Randy Hillier says, I'll read these two tweets in this order. This is a perversion of humanity to subject a child to torment and cruel punishment, then broadcast publicly the harm being done as somehow virtuous is perverted. A new term is rising. I was just following the herd. We've entered the COVID twilight zone. Okay, so here is 3 first-hand accounts of abuse that happened as a direct result of this policy being in place. Who will be held accountable? Quote from the first tweet. Exactly, as to, I have my 7-year-old in isolation downstairs. He keeps messaging me on Messenger. Mommy, I'm lonely. My 5-year-old wrote in his journal entry today that he is sad because his brother isn't here. I set up a baby monitor to let, and it's not fully... I can't read it all there. I couldn't find the original though. Here's another one. I've had a fever. I had a fever at the end of November and had to isolate from my 6, 4, and 2-year-old. Hearing my baby cry for me at night was devastating. Thankfully, my test came back negative 2 days later. I feel for you, Mama, sending positive vibes your way. And I'll show you this one because this is just appalling. So the 14-day isolation begins. Nothing has broken my heart like the sound of my 10-year-old crying while I sit on the other side of the door and tell him 14 days will go quickly. Hoping public health calls so we can get some advice and answers. That's Red Island Dreamer. And this is not, you don't put somebody in isolation because they committed no crime. And can a child understand what's going on? Is this how you do this? So this is Red Island Dreamer, and she says, turns out my heart can break more. Holding my 7-year-old while he cries because he misses his big brother and feels so alone is devastating. I cried, he cried, we all cried, but we're healthy and we are safe, so we hang on to that. Yikes. It's your job to advocate for your children. It's not your job to blindly follow the rules. It's not your job to administer the shocks until the patient can no longer respond, right? That's not what your job is as a parent. And it says, wow, my initial panic about having a child who needed to isolate for 14 days after a possible exposure at school has really blown up. My fault. I panicked. He is not locked in a room. He is not being left alone. I took down the tweet because I cannot stand to read the comments. It's abusive. It's abusive and it's insane, and people shouldn't be allowed to do it. And public health shouldn't be allowed to advocate for people to hurt their children. I spent years working with kids, and I did it because I believe that kids are worth it, right? I don't believe there's bad kids. I don't believe there are kids who deserve to be locked in a room for extended periods of time. I don't believe there are kids who deserve to be arbitrarily detained by their parents at the behest of public health. What is happening is nothing short of horrific abuse at the hands of public health, and they should be held accountable and they should lose their jobs. I can't overstate this. It's unbelievable that this is Canada. This should make you terribly sad and very concerned for the future. Okay, here's moving into further COVID stuff and mismanagement. Here's Governor Cuomo's in trouble because he moved COVID positive patients into nursing homes. The same happened in Canada, although I can't find the articles from Ontario. I'm sure there were articles about it in Ontario, but I can't find them this morning, so apologies about that. But here's Janice Dean. She says, my in-laws died in a nursing home. I took on Cuomo in their names. So there are people who are launching legal action against Governor Cuomo. I don't know how that's going to go. Who knows? But they're launching legal action because he moved COVID positive patients into nursing homes. And here is Quebec using long-term care homes to house COVID-19 patients who aren't residents. So they were creating hot zones for COVID-19 patients, and this is October 2020. Okay, so this happened in Canada, and again, I thought it happened in Ontario, but I don't have evidence this morning of that. Although I'm sure I reported on it, but I don't have evidence this morning. Here's Dr. Feisman. I don't like Dr. Feisman. I think he's taking money to push causes outside of advising the premier. I think it's a conflict of interest, and I think it's inappropriate, and I think that he should step down from advising the premier and being public. I think that it's completely inappropriate. He's completely smashed his own credibility to smithereens, and that's what I think about Dr. Feisman. All of that said, he's sharing the transcript, of the Long-Term Care Commission's interview with Long-Term Care Minister Muriel Fullerton, and so he shares that with his comments. And I just wanted to show you that it was known back in March of 2020 that long-term care was at risk. And we really haven't done anything to mitigate the risk for long-term care. How does locking down restaurants and gyms help long-term care? Are there a lot of long-term care restaurants who are going out to the gym and then, hitting the Swiss Chalet on the way home to pick up a rotisserie chicken? Like, I don't think so. It's maybe just me, but aren't long-term care residents in a long-term care home not going out too much? So if long-term care residents are at most risk, then what could possibly be the excuse for the lockdowns, right? And the lack of action for policies that just don't make any sense, like having staff work at multiple care homes, having hours at multiple care homes, right? Like, that's, if care home A gets it and Sally goes to care home A, B, C, and D, it's possible, right, in this highly contagious pandemic. But that was happening regularly, right? And instead of intelligently creating policies to protect long-term care that encouraged people to get hours all in one place, like cover the hours off rather than having people a la carte, right? And it's basically clientele. The clientele are the elderly people that you're serving, right? If you cut hair in one long-term care home, you could cut hair in like 6, right? Or something to that effect. I'm just giving you an example. But they could have created policies that dealt with this. They could have done something to protect them. Instead, what they did is destroyed our economy and then backhandedly blamed us while calling us racist, whilst when we were fearfully saying, you should probably close the borders now. Haven't you seen the videos of people collapsing? And they said, that's racist. We're pretty sure China had nothing to do with this. You racists. That's the lived experience of Canada 2020, right? If you're in long-term care, just be quiet and stay in your room, isolation, right? If you're a child, put your mask on, shut up. And if you happen to be in a classroom that has a child who's sick and tests positive for COVID-19, you and your family are now in isolation. Deal with it. And you, kid, better be in isolation by yourself from the rest of your family. I don't care how bad it seems to you. That's what we have to do to stay safe. Otherwise, the virus is going to get you. We didn't do this last year. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. And I realize kids weren't in school necessarily last year at this point in time. But this is draconian. People weren't being, if somebody was sick at work, the whole cohort of work people being sent home and self-isolating, et cetera, et cetera. Kids aren't getting sick with this as far as I've seen, right? The numbers don't bear this out. In fact, in Guelph, 2 children in the same school died of flu. That's more kids in 2018 in Guelph have died than all of Canada in COVID-19 underneath 19 years old. That's odd, right? Seems like an overreaction to me. When nothing happened in 2018, it was like a Trib headline. And I'm sorry, it's an awful, awful thing. And I couldn't imagine the pain of losing a child. But I never once thought twice about sending my kids to school or daycare at the time. Not twice. I didn't even know about it until after it had happened. The danger had probably passed by the time that I even was aware. Tells you how seriously public health took it then. So what's the difference? What's the change? It's incredible. And why the complete incompetence? Why has nobody done anything to actually meaningfully affect the transmission of COVID-19 in long-term care? Instead, the community transmission's up. We gotta, those long-term care people, man, they love their rotisserie chicken after the gym. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This headline caught my attention. I thought, what's the homeless industry? Toronto's homeless industry thriving during COVID-19, says Levy. And I thought, I'll look at that because it's kind of in the sphere of the COVID hotels and bad COVID policy, expensive COVID policy that's not proven at all to affect the transmissibility of this disease. How many homeless people have died with COVID-19? Shouldn't it have ripped through the homeless shelters, etc.? But it didn't. Nothing that I've heard, because I'm pretty sure if it did, we'd hear about it, right? But nope, haven't heard about it. Here's the article. I'm just going to give you the highlights. It says Toronto's homeless industry thriving. What does that mean? Compared to 2016, the cost to house each homeless person in a shelter bed per night has increased 300% from $71.92 per night to the current average of $220 per night. $220 per night? That used to be what you paid to go down and see The Lion King in Toronto at a Mervish theater, right? Now, right? And maybe you get a bundle like dinner and a show with the hotel, right? Maybe it's $300 for the show too. Like all in. Anyway, regardless. Tourism, when that was legal, right? No longer. Anyway, back to this. Not unless you're elite. Not unless you're an NHL athlete, right? And you're in the bubble. Because they need to eat. Have you heard of kitchens? Okay, back to this. The 2021 shelter support and housing budget is $1.1 billion. That is a 77% increase from 2016 at $668 million. That's a massive increase. Massive increase. What are we getting from this? The number of people working in the city's shelter support and housing administration (SSHA) has increased 46% from 757 staff in 2016 to 1,106 approved positions in the 2021 budget. Okay, the increase in servicing people started in 2017 with an influx of refugees to Toronto, reaffirmed as a sanctuary city by the mayor and council in late January 2017. By April 2018, when the last street needs assessment, SNA, was conducted, officials found that 40% of beds were being occupied by refugee claimants. The SNA also reported that 52% of those had not lived in Toronto in the previous year. Factoring out refugees, 30% of the homeless reported coming to Toronto in the 12 months prior to the count. Some 14% said that they'd come from another Ontario community, 9% from another province, and 5% from another country. So if you take out the people, the 40% being occupied by refugees, the breakdown was the 30% coming to Toronto in the past 12 months. So relatively new people taking a lot of money from this program. That's what they mean by the homelessness industry, right? So it employs a lot of people. It serves a lot of people from meals to hotel rooms and all of that other stuff. And this seems to be the model going forward. Like everybody's just going to be, herded into these hotels. I don't know. It seems like that's the plan. I don't know what's coming next, but it doesn't seem great, right? This is, I'm going to talk about the Gulag hotels. This is just kind of a one-off story. Quick, Canada's spy agency wants more power. They want to be able to collect intelligence in foreign countries. So like MI6 and the CIA can do. I guess they can collect intelligence in other countries and then use that in their country, but in Canada, CSIS doesn't have that power, so they want that power. So Kian from The Rebel is going into the belly of the beast, to use his words, and he's going into a COVID hotel, and he reports directly from the COVID hotel, and it's pretty terrible. I've got some other videos to show you as well. Here he is trying to call down to the hotel lobby to ask about his food, and he gets an answering machine, and then he reads out what the menu says like dinner will be delivered by 7 p.m. or between 7 and 8 p.m. and he didn't get it until later, etc. It's a very interesting piece and good for Kian. He also had all his bags lost, as far as I could understand, his laptops and all of the stuff that he was working with. I think I'd carry that in my carry-on. That's maybe just me, but I would definitely keep that kind of stuff with me. I don't check those kind of things, but man, that's risky. So speaking of COVID hotels, Kian is just one person. Here is a COVID hotel where they're out of food, and people are just upset and yelling at the people. I think I may have shown this yesterday. The guy points and says, "Get the camera down." Yeah, so I showed this one yesterday. Yeah, he's like, "Get the camera down." I'm interpreting the point. Here is food from one of the quarantine hotels. This is what quarantine gets you in Canada. Yummy, right? Yummy. Ugh. I mean, it doesn't look like awful or anything like that, but it doesn't look like super if I was going on vacation somewhere and they gave me this, I'd be like, we could try again with food that looks appetizing, because this looks like the baby's diaper. It's like beanie and here are people upset, yelling at people. This person said, "My test came back damaged specimen, so I had to go back to Terminal 1 and get retested, and I will wait times are 24 to 72 hours. So I had to rebook the hotel at $365 a night." Here's the people being upset.
For a room. No, he's giving us sandwiches. I understand that.
And we are not anyone's dependent.
This would be the worst customer service job ever. All the ire of the government, like people's anger and frustration at the government is coming down on this guy's head, and he's just like, I just wanted to be a hotel manager. Like this is not what I agreed to. There was another clip that I saw. I'm going to go look for it because I think it's worthwhile. But there was another clip that I saw. Hopefully I can find it quickly. That had people lined up for food because they ran out of food. People were in the lobby lining up for food. And this is healthy, right? These are all people who are in quarantine waiting for COVID, but they have to line up for food. Hold on. I'm going to go get the clip. Be right back. All right, here it is.
You guys here for food?
Yeah, ordering for the food.
How long you been here?
Yeah, since I came to this premises, it's more than 2 hours now.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
So here's the line for food. We got to come down to the lobby again for food. Okay? This is what's been happening.
Oh, right. Yeah. So we're all in quarantine, right, for COVID-19, right? And it's very dangerous. And we have to come down here to get food. Yep. Sure. Sounds good. This guy says, we have a fascinating story on the National tonight about those quarantine hotels. I know they're not meant to discourage people from traveling, but I don't think they're supposed to be punitive. But the first-hand accounts sound a bit like that. And Chris Selly says, they're absolutely meant to be punitive. Yeah. Yep, they are. And he compares New Zealand managed isolation to Canada's COVID hellish isolation camps. And I haven't actually read it. I was planning on reading it. I just thought it was funny because I do believe that it is not looking out for your health and safety to charge you $300 a night to isolate in a hotel with absolutely no data that backs up that that's better somehow than going home. Do you think this is better than going home? Do you think this guy interacting with all of these people waiting in line for food is better than him going home? Like, this is a quagmire. This is an absolute misstep understates it by a large magnitude. And it doesn't seem to matter. They don't seem to care. It's like having public health recommend that you abuse your children. Like, okay, public health, thank you, I will. I'll administer the shock because you say so. Yes, you have to wear the mask. Listen to your teacher. You're a terrible human being, Timmy. Get to your room because somebody in your classroom is sick. Like, how do you think kids are internalizing this? It's incredibly damaging. This is very inappropriate. Has anybody talked to a developmental psychologist talking about covering masks for long periods of time just from a developmental standpoint? Like, what are we doing to our kids through this? Unbelievably terrifying. But this is just like, this is that stupid. This is that stupid, right? More stupid. So anyway, stupid people are leading us to our doom, I think. Okay, hold on. Let me get my tabs ready. When I talk too long, sometimes they go to sleep now in Chrome. So what are you going to do? Anyway, here is getting into some regular governing, I suppose, and some wee scandal stuff. Facebook action in Australia proves the need for regulation, says Heritage Minister Stephen Guillebaud. I think that it's interesting that they are trying to use Facebook to pay for news broadcasting. It's taxing Facebook and using it to silence or manage for validity, I suppose, but it's not really that. The news that people see and talk about, right? And they're saying Facebook, but I fear that it will be any online entity. We'll have to pay for links or pay for linking to news or something to that effect. So I'll be interested to see how this will affect me. I think that it is specifically targeted to impact people like Rebel and people like me, although I don't necessarily think I'm impactful enough for them to be focusing on me. I'm not that narcissistic. But I think that they don't like people who are able to put things together easily and create easily consumable things for people. I think that they want to use every power they can to stop people freely discussing things that this government doesn't want them discussing. And people they want to disrupt as much as possible people like me who put things together like this. So, yeah, I think that's the track we're on, and it's terrible. Here is Linda Frum, and she says, what does it say about the state of political affairs in Canada when a minister of the Crown can boldly lie with impunity? Blair testifying before a parliamentary committee. Liberty spews out outrageous falsehoods, and it's clear he does not expect to be challenged on them. And he really wasn't challenged on them. So it's very scary. This is part of the gun lobby, and Blair is talking about how the Conservatives want to license assault rifles in Canada, which is a bold-faced lie. And it's a good little minute. I think it's a minute long. Worthwhile to underline just how much bold-faced lying is going on by our honorable ministers. Right? Very interesting. Very interesting. Ombudsman admits she hasn't produced a report in 2 years despite being paid $432,000. I can do reports that I don't have to ever submit. Sure. Where do you sign up for that job? I'm writing it now. I'll get to you soon. Yes, very, very, it's top of my list of important things to do. What's the deadline again? Oh, there is no deadline? Wonderful. I'll have it done soon. Keep it muddy, right? Here is Justin Trudeau. He had time to go on NBC's Meet the Press yesterday, and he was asked about Saudi Arabia, XL, and some other things. When asked about Saudi Arabia, the Chuck Todd says, is Saudi Arabia an ally to Canada? And Trudeau says, I wouldn't say that. They're a country that we do business with. Huh. Isn't that interesting? We just sell them arms, and we buy their oil because Canadian oil is abhorrent, despite the environmental standards that we've got. And Saudi Arabian oil is perfect in every way, and no carbon tax on that, right? So I mean, that's just a straight up business decision, right? Easy, no problem. We couldn't insult our trading partners by applying the same standard to their oil that we apply to Canadian oil. That would be crazy. And this Canada's pipeline regulator says it's taking a stand against systemic racism. We can't transport racist oil. We buy it and let Irving process it. No problem. Well, I guess that depends on your definition of racist oil. Is Saudi Arabian oil racist? More racist than Canadian oil? We'll have to ask the Canadian pipeline regulator. Whose oil is more racist? And please give your reasoning. I would love to have I would love to be able to ask administrators and people in charge questions like this. Please do give me your reasoning. Make it 1,000 words. Please, let's get real deep into why you think that this oil in this pipeline is racist. And Saudi Arabian oil is pure, clean as the driven snow, right? And why does the carbon tax apply only to Canadian oil and not foreign oil? Just questions off the top of my head. Please. 1,500 words if you need them. Sure. Yeah. We can expand even up to 2,000. I would love to hear it. I would love to hear the rationalizations. Here is former We Charity donor moving into We. Board member Reed Cowan says he has reported We Charity for fraud with the IRS and asked the RCMP to seize We Charity documents in incendiary video. It's a little late. Spoiler alert, it's a little late. Do you remember back when the We Charity thing was blowing up and then Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament and then there was all sorts of trucks outside of We and Joe Warmington took pictures of the trucks and said, this seems suspicious? That's when things like this should have been happening. And now we've got some angry donors, and we've got some lack of evidence because I think we's done. So, the business doesn't exist anymore. I shredded those documents. Shucks, gosh darn it anyway. If only we could get them back, right? MP joins former donor in calling for RCMP investigation into wheat charity. Spoiler alert, they'll get to that right after they get to the obstruction of justice thing for Justin Trudeau with SNC-Lavalin. They're working on it. When's the due date for the report? Oh, did Iran tell you guys who shot down their plane? Yeah, I'm working on it. Working on it, guys. We'll get there. Garbage. Derek Sloan is sharing things. He says this is a very abnormal and asymmetrical, not asymptomatic, crisis. They will have it, those who have the least are suffering the most. This is a grave injustice. It says all the jobs lost in 2020 were among workers with wages below Canadian average. So, like tourism, people who are working part-time or jobs that we're filling a need in their life, right? Whether that be needing for them to have something to do or needing for them to have a community to be a part of, right? Like sometimes when you've got like work friends that are your lifeline, right? Who knows why these jobs existed at the level they existed, but a lot of the impact was with people who were paid less. And that seems, and again, I don't like to play the racism, victimization, hold your victimization up game. That's not the point here, but it's very interesting to look at that and understand that the suffering there is suffering out there, and it's being borne by quite a lot of people in roles that are needed. And like, it's not like society's better without them. Right? It's not like society's better without the ski hills and without the skating rinks and without the being able to go to Canada's Wonderland and being able to go to like a hotel like Great Wolf Lodge or just being able to go across the border to like Pennsylvania or something to that effect for shopping, right? All of this stuff that we used to take for granted. When's the last time you called your friends and said, we're going to go across the border to look for deals, right? That Canadian dollar is doing real well, right? It just doesn't happen. And it's terrible. It's terrible because it impacts so many people. And I talk about kids a lot. And I talk about kids just because I know about kids, I guess. And kids are existing in that situation. Kids are existing with their parents not being able to work. Kids are existing with their parents not being able to provide for them and not having really any options. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Because this isn't a COVID crisis. This is a self-made governing crisis. MP joins former donor. This is the article for this, I believe. So possibly this was out of line, but out of order. Anyway, moving on. Roman Baber says over 100 Simcoe Muskoka businesses call on Mayor Jeff and regional MPPs to urge Doug Ford not to move the region into the gray. Email Lehman, local mayors, and he adds them today to demand they stand up for Simcoe Muskoka. This is yesterday, the video was circulating of the public health doctors talking about how they were acting early and making sure that it's for your safety that we're completely destroying your economy. Don't complain about it, or you're a white supremacist right winger, right? But now small businesses are getting in on this, right? Over 100 small Simcoe Muskoka businesses call on Mayor Jeff Lehman and regional MPs to urge the province to move region into gray. That's good. That's good. People need to stand up. PEI, okay, I'll pause it, hold on. It appears that PEI is pursuing the COVID zero strategy. Here's PEI reporting 5 new COVID-19 cases. Active total rises to 18, and they are locking down for 72 hours. PEI to introduce 3-day lockdown to battle growing COVID-19 outbreak. Right? Officials in Prince Edward Island have placed the province under a 72-hour lockdown starting at midnight on Monday after multiple new infections and 2 clusters of COVID-19 emerged over the weekend. Oh no, got to lock everything down. Here's Alberta. Yet another day of declines in COVID-19 hospitalizations in Alberta, including ICUs, and still Alberta Health and Mayor Nenshi insists there's a problem and won't allow people to go back to normal. How much longer? This is just getting embarrassing. It was embarrassing a while ago. It was criminal a long time ago. And it's unbelievable that there isn't more pushback. Here's what Sweden looks like yesterday. This is a photo, 2 days ago, I guess, February 27th or March 1st. So yeah, 2 days ago. There is no health without freedom. And man, yeah, it's really important. It's really, really important. People who don't have the resources to make things okay, and by make things okay, like have video games, maybe have close family over, or whatever, however you're getting through it, right? But people who don't have those resources or those close family nearby, or if they're taken in by the COVID-19 boogeyman, It's very difficult, right? And it's unbelievable. Here's the results of the International Mask Wearing Survey over the fall and winter in Japan. Compliance never moved from between 95 to 98% over the entire period. So why did deaths skyrocket? Mask behavior never changed. Why didn't they stop this? So yeah, daily deaths in Japan. I'll move myself up here to understand what's going on. Japan is doing it right with masks. Vanity Fair says May 8th. New York Times, masks worked in Japan on June 6th, September 2nd to September 2nd and February 26th are listed here, but it looks like September 2nd, 95. Oh, okay. So the rest of the graph is 95 to 98% mask compliance, but a massive uptick in deaths. So how come the masks didn't stop that? That seems to be a reasonable question that anybody who's looking at the data would ask, right? What happened there, right? If we all wear masks, but must still quarantine after any contact with someone who has the vid. What's the point of the mask? Oh, the COVID. If I get the vax and must still wear masks, distance and quarantine, what's the point of the vaccine? Yeah, there's the cost value benefit. Like the cost of getting the vaccine versus the value it gives me doesn't seem worth it to me. And nobody can explain it in a way that makes it seem to have a higher value. If you get vaccinated, you might get sick. Probably more symptoms than COVID itself, right? People report getting very ill. They don't report good outcomes. There's lots of instances of people having body aches and flu-like symptoms after having the vaccine, which is what I'm trying to get at. And so afterwards, you still have to do everything that an unvaccinated person does. What's the point? And some people say, oh, maybe less symptoms. What if you were one of the people who didn't have any symptoms in the first place? Lawyers to sue WHO for misleading world over COVID-19 outbreak. This is the same lawsuit from the German lawyer, and he's talking about Nuremberg too. People are like, yeah, man, you got to get into this. It's going to be so good. I'll hold my breath. I hope that it's great. I hope that it's wonderful. I hope that there's big, shocking news coming out of Germany, and that sets a world precedent and whatever. I've been disappointed before. Sorry. I hope that it works, man. I hope that it works. I've been disappointed. I'm older and wiser today than I am even a year ago. And I've been disappointed before. Even when they say we've got an ironclad case, slam dunk. We saw the numbers moving on TV. Yeah, totally. Slam dunk. Not going to lose. Speaking of fraudulent elections, let's talk about our election 44. The federal party leaders have maintained they don't want a pandemic election, but their actions tell a different story, says the Huffington Post. Yeah, it seems very electioneering, election air is in the air. There's the Jagmeet Singh is getting into healthcare in a big way, right? He'd really like to take over the provincial responsibilities. Justin Trudeau is, he's doing whatever Justin Trudeau does to get ready for an election. And there's a whole lot of signals that show party leaders and insiders and Elections Canada could be gearing up for spring election. Yeehaw, right? This is another one. Rex Glazer says he's responding to CP24's gummed up bills in the House of Commons, harbinger of a federal election. Oh, the Liberals want their majority so they can push through whatever they want and spend with impunity like they haven't already. But it's a minority government and they haven't tabled a budget in 700 odd days? Ha! What a joke. Anyway, he says, so the Conservatives are forcing the election, says Trudeau's media. So it was the Conservatives that prorogued Parliament for 6 weeks too, right? These Liberal bills are so important, they shut Parliament down to end the Wee investigation to protect Trudeau. Yep, that was exactly what happened. Here's Ezra Levant. If you thought voting by mail was corrupt, imagine voting by phone. That's Trudeau's plan. Yeah. Sure, why not? Liberal majority on House Affairs Committee wants phone-in voting in a pandemic election. Opposition parties won't warn of fraud. I remember during the American election when Donald Trump said, late in the night, there'll be a dump of a whole bunch of votes and that'll put Biden over the top and it'll be fraudulent because of the mail-in ballots and it will not be able to be verified properly and blah, 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 blah. And you know what? Trump was right. It was exactly right. And I fear that our opposition will be exactly right. And the issues that our opposition will highlight will happen. And no one will care and will carry on as if the election wasn't completely rigged and fraudulent. And nobody will really bring it up. And everybody will carry on with the pantomime that we have a say in the governance of our country. which it seems like we don't. It seems like even the public health, right? Public health says if you don't abuse your kid, we're going to charge you $1,000 a day or $5,000 a day, $5,000 a day. How dare you? How dare you not isolate your child? Get in there, Timmy. Your friend was sick. Every household to get prepaid blank postcards, courtesy of Canada Post. Oh, thanks, Canada Post. Heart. Right? Like you could write a letter to somebody and you could send it for free. That's so great. Here's an idea. Lori Goldstein highlights in an effort to encourage Canadians to keep in touch during the pandemic, blah, 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 the 13.5 million postcards. Postage paid postcards will begin arriving at every residential address across the country starting Monday. Wonderful, right? So Rob says, so 13 million postcards will arrive at 24 Sussex containing one word, resign. That'd be fun, right? 24 Sussex, dear Justin, please resign, leave. Okay, I think that's going to be the end of the show. I had one more tab, but it doesn't really fit, so I'm just going to leave it. I'll leave it in the description if you want to check it out. It's just a minor story. A minor story they're using to push their ideology. Okay, I'll show you what it is. It's a Toronto Star article saying that this person was... by grade 11, Emily Webb had been sexually assaulted twice. Now she's pushing the Ontario government for more comprehensive teachings around consent and sexual assault through TikTok and Instagram. I think it's distractionary, and I think that they use this and they use kids to get public support to push their ideological changes that they want to make in the schools. Oh, well, this Emily person says that she was assaulted, so we should strengthen those consent guidelines. No, thank you very much. Teach my children to read, write, and do arithmetic. I'll deal with the rest of it. And not to say that consent shouldn't be discussed. Your body, your choice, and all that, except when it comes to masks, right? And except when it comes to your friend getting sick. Because if your friend gets sick and the whole cohort gets dismissed, you have to self-isolate for 2 weeks, right? You're in jail and in isolation. Lucky you, right? I remember watching Oz, and they sent them to the hole, and they were like, no, not the hole. And it was 2 weeks in the hole, and they just sat there, and it was... I can't remember exactly. There was a storyline talking about how damaging it was, and there was a big push talking about how what's the jail term for it? Hold on. Solitary. I was going to look up solitary. I was going to look up jail self-isolation, but it's solitary isolation, right? That's illegal. You can't do that. And there was a report recently done in Ontario. And recently, I'm referencing something I saw probably years ago, talking about specifically how solitary confinement and juvenile detention is child abuse and it's not tolerable. I'm gonna have to find that because I think that's appropriate to share today. But I think that it's incredible that we can recognize solitary confinement is not good for people in old age homes. Solitary confinement is not good for people in jail. But the health unit can say, you know what? You get that kid into that room and you don't let them out. It's frustrating. So anyway, the ideology they're using the news they're using to get the public consent to change the programs in schools to match the ideology they want. And it has nothing to do with Emily or her unfortunate sexual assaults or anything like that. It has everything to do with getting the public to consent to the government changing something within that context, and not changing it, removing it, changing it, fine-tuning it a little bit, making that consent conversation happen in grade 2 or whatever. Anyway, regardless, I think that it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating to have everything focus on exactly the wrong things all the time. Like this, Canada Post sending postcards to people. What a waste of money. What a ridiculous waste of money. Okay, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful